We start in Cameroon, where long-standing President Paul Biya has been announced as the winner of Cameroon's heavily disputed elections. Biya, who at 92 is the world's oldest head of state, will now serve an 8th consecutive term in office. He first came to power in 1982. Opposition leader Issa Chiroma Bakary had already declared himself the winner, saying the Constitutional Council would announce a tainted result. More than 8 million people were registered to vote ahead for the October 12th poll. Paul Biya could now be in power beyond his 99th birthday. Streets in Bamenda City in the English-speaking west of the country are deserted amid fears of unrest. At least 4 people were killed during the protests over the weekend, all in Douala, the authorities said. Meanwhile, opposition challenger Mr. Bakary reported gunfire near his home. The BBC's Paul J has been speaking to protesters in Garoua, which is in the northern part of the country.
The so-called saviors of Cameroon tread the streets of Garoua. From the length and breadth of this northern city, you can't help but notice these men, women and children who say they are marching against electoral fraud. Presidential candidate Issa Chiroma Bakary urged them to storm the streets to defend what he describes as his victory in the election. Garoua is his hometown and political stronghold, so his cause resonates deeply with many here.
We want change. It's been long, 43 years since the president has been in power. Normally, he should give up. Cameroonians want change because nothing works in the country. We are fed up.
Behind me are supporters of opposition candidate Issa Chiroma Bakary. They say that they do not want their victory to be stolen and are insisting that this is a march to liberate Cameroon. Across the country, Chiroma Bakary has called for his supporters to rally and ask the government to give them their victory. But the Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atokani, says these gatherings are illegal because they have not been authorized. It remains to be seen what the outcome of this will be.
Less than an hour later, chaos sets in as security forces use tear gas to disperse the protesters. But many of them remain defiant. We were protesting peacefully, this man says. We weren't even using stones. We raised our hands, yet they still targeted us. What sort of behavior is that? We want change. This is not democracy. At nightfall, the situation became uncontrollable as angry protesters burnt tires on the streets. Once a rarity here, these have become regular occurrences since the son of the soil, Issa Chiroma Bakary, severed ties with his boss, Paul Biya.
We are all Cameroonians here. Why intimidate us? We only seek the truth. We don't want a government that rules by proxy.
As the government beefs up security nationwide, focus remains on this man, the initiator of the protests. When I met him a few days earlier, he displayed unshaken confidence in his plans.
The government is saying that other opposition leaders before you have tried to unseat the President of the Republic via different means, including street protests, and have not succeeded. And some say that your case will not be any different. How do you respond to that?
Well, let us see. Let us see.
In a previous clash here in Garoua, this primary school teacher called Zua Hiratu was killed. Her family says she wasn't among the protesters. Each passing day is now a moment of reckoning for her uncle, who stands next to her grave, reflecting on the impact of her demise.
The death of a teacher is a great loss to the whole nation, not just the family. We could say it was a move to settle scores. Maybe the attackers knew she was a teacher.
The next president will have the daunting task of reconciling this highly divided country. Paul Njie, BBC News, Garoua.
Let's now speak to Paul J. in Garoua. Many thanks for joining us on the program, Paul. So we've just heard that earlier today, Mr. Biya was announced the president of this election. What's the reaction across the country?
Well, Rhoda, the reaction has been varied, but mostly we've seen people in certain parts of the country chagrined by this move to give President Paul Biya the victory. In the economic capital, Douala, there were protests there of people who took to the streets and expressed their displeasure with the ruling of the Constitutional Council. In Garoua, in the north of the country where I am, the opposition leader Issa Chiroma Bakari, who had declared himself winner, said that snipers were firing at civilians who had camped at his compound, and he said 2 people were killed in that incident. By and large, people here have been saying that they really expected this time around to be different. You just watched the piece played a little earlier from yesterday's protest. The people there told us that their victory has been stolen, and they felt that Issa Chiroma Bakari was the rightful winner. But the government authorities, especially Interior Minister Paul Atanganji, had insisted that Issa Chiroma Bakari's claim of victory was not right because the Constitutional Council had not yet announced the results. So that's what we can tell you about the reaction to these requests of Cameroonian government officials for people to celebrate the victory in peace. Paul Biya himself did speak about his victory, saying that he's going to bring more peace and prosperity to the country, especially tackling the problems of women and young people.
What about Mr. Bakari? Has he been able to hold a press conference, for instance, and talk about the announcement that was made earlier today by the Constitutional Council, and what did he have to say?
Well, he hasn't been so outright about the election, and he hasn't organized any press conference. What he did communicate today was that snipers fired at civilians who camped at his residence today, leading to the death of 2 people. Essentially, he has stayed firm in his response that he is the legitimate winner of the presidential election despite the results. But the government officials today were celebrating the victory of President Paul Biya. You know, the Constitutional Council president said Paul Biya was the winner with over 50% of the votes and gave Issa Chiroma Bakari 35%. And the days ahead will still tell us what will become of this country. But analysts we had spoken to said that there is the propensity or the risk of this country plunging into political turmoil.
All right, many thanks for joining us on the program. That's the BBC's Paul J reporting live from Garoua.